Hello there fellow acolytes and welcome to yet another Switch Gems video, the series where we look at a variety of different gems for the system, from retail games to eShop games, from cheap games to expensive games, and from well-known games to quite hidden titles. Hopefully there's going to be something there for everybody. I'm not going to continue wasting any time, so let's jump straight into the first pick. First game on my list is Old School Musical. Old School Musical, or OSM as I'm going to refer it to from now on, is a rhythm game, much in the style of something like Space Channel 5, where you need to follow the on-screen prompts, which go along with the rhythm of the songs playing in the background, and whilst you're doing this, the story is going on in the background. The button inputs more or less correspond to the actions that you're doing on screen, and if you mess up, it can result in lower HP. You lose more HP the more times you mess up, and as you get notes right, you build up a multiplier, and then once you've built up enough of a multiplier, you start regaining HP. It's an interesting system, and it's quite rewarding as well because it means that the game's not overly difficult on the normal setting. You may find that there are some difficult parts, of course, but with this system of regaining HP, it means that the game's not overly punishing. If you fuck up during a section, then as long as you survive, you can generally get back on track and regain full HP, and get back into the swing of things. It keeps the game moving and stops you from getting stressed because you're having to replay songs again and again, which is especially good because the songs are actually quite long. However, I do recommend that you fail at least one time just to see the game over screen because that's something special. The story itself is sort of nonsensical and really just an excuse to go into various different locations that represent old school games. The game focuses on knowingly being in locations that are from retro video games. For example, you'll go into a Metal Gear Solid world and one of the main characters will be wearing Quiet's costume. Similarly, there'll be other bits, for example in a Mega Man world, one of them is using a Rush costume, and once they go underwater, the Rush costume allows him to transform to turn into a submarine, just like in the games. It's quirky and it certainly has its charms, and the music too is very good. This is certainly a cool game to play if you like rhythm action games. Aside from the story mode, which isn't too long, there's also a bonus mode full of songs that don't really fit in the main game in something called Chicken Republic. Chicken Republic ups the difficulty quite substantially, but it's still cool to play. There's also a multiplayer mode and a quick play mode, and it's all integrated through quite a seamless menu system. Everything is really kind of fast and easy to get to in the game, and I really have to praise the game for that. So yeah, OSM is a pretty cool game, so pick it up. The next game on the list is Kamiko. Kamiko is a top-down action RPG game, very much in the style of The Legend of Zelda. You control one of three heroes. The first one has a sword, which pretty much acts as you'd expect it to. The second has a bow and arrow, and the final has a shield and a short sword. The shield can be thrown like a boomerang, and whilst you're waiting for the shield to come back, you can use your little sword for relatively minor damage, just as a form of defense. It's a bit of a budget title, but the game looks and feels beautiful. The controls are really responsive, and every attack has a very kind of meaty feel to it, so the game is very satisfying to play. Much like Zelda, you need to solve a variety of puzzles, albeit the puzzles in this game are relatively straightforward and nothing will prove too taxing for you. Instead of having one large overworld and a bunch of different dungeons, instead this game has different areas, and each area has 4 different shrines that you have to activate, which will then open the teleportal to beat the boss. And even though the enemies you may fight along the way don't really seem to be anything special, the bosses are really good. They're really well thought out, and they're something that you would expect to find in a Legend of Zelda game because they're very creative and very well done. The game is pretty short. It takes maybe about 40 minutes to beat with each character, but the good thing is you'll beat the game and then you'll want to go and jump straight back in with the next character. And even when you're done with all 3, you'll probably want to go back and replay it every so often, because the game is quite addictive. Being such a short game and having such compact worlds really works in the game's favour because it gives the game a certain element of replayability you don't normally get with Zelda games. And the game is so cheap as well on the eShop that it's definitely a must-buy for any Switch owner. Jumping from a Legend of Zelda clone to an F-Zero clone now, and this time we have Fast RMX. Fast RMX is a futuristic racing game where you control an anti-gravity craft as you race around various different futuristic circuits. The game is extremely fast paced, as you would expect from an F-Zero game, and you can go even faster with the use of a boost. You can pick up certain orbs throughout the track which increase your boost meter, or alternatively you can gain a boost by driving on strips of blue or orange track that you'll find along the way. This is part of where the game differs from F-Zero. Your ship can alternate between blue and orange, and if you drive along a strip of track that's the same colour as you, you'll gain a boost. If you're using a different colour, it'll slow you down. It's not just limited to boost tracks as well. There are jumps in the game which you can only pull off if you're the same colour as the ramp. If not, then you won't get the jump at all. Sometimes this will have very little effect and just make you go down an alternate route, but sometimes it may result in your death. The colour switching mechanic is really well done, and it's something that reminds me of something like Radiant Silvergun or Ikaruga if you've ever played those games, where you need to match your colours appropriately. This gimmick really sets it apart from F-Zero and makes its own thing. The tracks too are really well designed. There's a variety of different tracks on offer. You've got futuristic cities, you've got tracks in space, jungles, ice levels, you name it, it's here. The aesthetic variety of the levels will definitely keep you interested as you race around the tracks. Of course, being an F-Zero clone, you'd expect the difficulty to be quite high, and this game doesn't disappoint. Even on the lowest difficulty, you may have some trouble now and then, if you're not particularly good at racing games like myself, and as the difficulties progress, things get harder and harder to an insane degree. But the Grand Prix is not where the fun's at, of course. The fun is at playing multiplayer. If you've got a friend, the game is absolutely fantastic. It also has split Joy-Con support as well, so it's something that's easy enough to play in multiplayer. It's not the cheapest eShop game out there, but it's not particularly expensive either. There's certainly a lot of content to offer, and the game is very well done. While we're still waiting on an F-Zero game, which may or may not ever happen, this is definitely a good substitute in the meantime. So I'd say if you're a fan of racing games, and in particular the F-Zero series, definitely give this a shot. Moving on now, we have Sega Ages, Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic the Hedgehog was one of the first titles to be released in the Sega Ages line on the Nintendo Switch, and it does a pretty good job of providing a conversion that's worthwhile buying. Of course, we have the Sega Mega Drive Classics collection, which includes Sonic 1, so is this game worth buying? In my opinion, if you're a Sonic fan, I would say the answer is definitely a yes. While Sonic the Hedgehog is available on the Classics collection, what you actually get from this is a lot of enhancements too. You can play the international or the Japanese versions of the game, which have their own minor differences, but it also has the Mega Play version available. The Mega Play version was like an arcade version of the game. It didn't contain all the zones from the main game, however the Mega Play version is sufficiently different enough to warrant a playthrough. Each act has a time limit that goes down, and you need to beat the act within that time. If the time runs out, you lose a life. If you're familiar with the original Sonic game, it's a nice little twist to just force you to do that a little bit better. Whilst it starts out relatively easy in Green Hill Zone, the difficulty picks up, and you'll really have to be on top of your game in order to get through without dying or without running out of time. You can also play the different versions of the game with the Spin Dash and the Drop Dash, which are very welcome additions and help pick up the pace of Sonic the Hedgehog. The original Sonic game is a little bit more slower in pace, and the addition of these two dashes really helps make the game flow a little bit better and seem a little bit less slow than the original was. There's also another mode which is more of a beginner's mode. It's effectively the same game, but instead of losing all your rings when you get hit, you only lose half of them. Whilst this mode's probably not something that any veteran of the series is going to play, it's good that they have that option for either young children or people who just aren't very good at Sonic games. The game also has a save state function and a lot of different filters you can use. My favourite filter is the vintage one, which makes it look like it's being played on a CRT television, but there are lots of different options for you to play around with to see what best suits you. My only disappointment with the game is the challenge mode. Now the challenge mode has a time attack on the very first act in the game, Green Hill Act 1, and it has a score attack on the Mega Play version. And that's it. And I kind of feel that's a little bit disappointing. However, there's enough content here to warrant a purchase. If you're not a massive Sonic fan, maybe I would just buy the Classics collection instead. But if you are a fan of Sonic, then I'd say they definitely did a great job of this and it's worthwhile picking up. The final entry this time, and my personal pick, is Marble It Up. Marble It Up is sort of like a 3D puzzle platformer. It's very much in the same kind of vein as something like Marble Madness, Marble Blast Ultra, or even Super Monkey Ball to an extent, you navigate small different areas, and usually you need to traverse yourself from the start to the finish. One thing that separates itself from something like Marble Madness or Monkey Ball is that you don't have a time limit in order to finish. This does lessen the difficulty quite substantially because you can take your time in order to do things carefully, and there are checkpoints thrown around as well. However, where the difficulty comes in is actually completing the levels in a certain amount of time in order to earn particular medals. The medals in turn unlock different skins for your marble, and they're kinda cool skins as well, so there is an incentive to keep playing and getting better scores just to unlock those things. Skins are tied to game completion, they're also tied to, as I mentioned before, medals, but some are also hidden within specific levels. If you explore and go off the beaten path and try to do some crazy traversal skills, you may end up finding these. To be honest, the game is extremely addictive and has some very tight controls that you will want to replay levels again and again in order to get better times and unlock the different things. There are 40 levels at present, and to be honest, you will get through those levels pretty fast. Getting all the medals and the skins is obviously where a lot of the extra time will come in, but if you're not into that, then this game may seem on the short side. However, it will be getting future content, including extra maps and potentially a level editor. I don't know if the level editor is just going to be for the PC or whether it'll be for the Switch version as well. However, there's still going to be free maps coming your way to provide extra content. As a big fan of the Monkey Ball games and of Marble Madness, I found this game extremely addictive, and it's probably one of my favourite titles on the Switch. It's not my absolute favourite, I still prefer things like Super Mario Odyssey for example, but it's one of those nice games that you can just pick up, play and have a blast with. So those were the 5 games we covered this time. We had Old School Musical, Kamiko, Fast RMX, Sega Ages, Sonic the Hedgehog, and finally Marble It Up. 5 great games that I would recommend picking up and adding to your collection. Have you played any of them before? If so, drop a comment telling me what you think of them, and maybe leave some suggestions of your own for future episodes. Well, thanks a lot for tuning in this time, and I'll see you next time. Bye.